Listen closely, because tonight's story begins with a secret that was never meant to be discovered on a rainy night. They say that when the rain falls over Brighton, the sea remembers things people forget. And on this particular night, soft thunder rolling in the distance, droplets sliding like silver threads down sleepy windows, a mysterious envelope appeared on the doorstep of a small seaside cottage. Inside it was a single line: "If you follow the sound of the rain, you will find what you've been searching for." But who sent it? And more importantly, what was waiting at the end of the rain-soaked path? Hold that thought. Because before we reach the answer, before the night reveals its hidden message, the rain had already been falling for hours, long before the sky darkened enough for the lanterns in Brighton to flicker. Unlike wary guardians of the night, the gentle downpour wrapped the entire seaside town in a silver, blue haze, turning every street into a quiet stream of glowing puddles and soft reflections. Eleanor sat near her cottage window, legs curled beneath her, a cup of steaming chamomile tea warming her palms. She loved this sort of rain. Steady, whispering, patient. Rain that felt like a lullaby written only for her. Her cottage stood near the edge of the pebble beach, close enough for the ocean's exhale to blend with the rain's rhythm. Tonight, the two sounds seemed woven together, each wave syncing with the pattern of falling raindrops. Eleanor breathed deeply, letting the soft fog on the window glass blur her vision. The world outside looked dreamy, softened, as if wrapped in velvet. The street lamp nearest her window flickered gently, stretching golden light across the rain-soaked cobblestones. Occasionally, a passing silhouette drifted by, umbrella held low, footsteps slow and careful. But mostly, the night was quiet, still, the kind of night where thoughts drifted lazily, and nothing felt urgent. Eleanor traced a small heart on the fogged glass with her fingertip. The outline glowed, faintly from the lantern outside. She had always been drawn to rainy nights, but lately something deeper tugged at her. Whenever the clouds opened, a longing she couldn't quite name. A feeling in her chest, like a question waiting patiently for an answer. She brought the cup to her lips, sipping warmly. The scent of chamomile filled her senses, soothing the tension she hadn't realized was lingering in her shoulders. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the soft cushion behind her. The rain sounded different tonight, more melodic, more deliberate, almost as if it was trying to tell her something. Then she heard it, a soft, gentle knock on the door. Her eyes fluttered open. The knock was not loud nor repeated, just one single tap. A polite request for her attention. Visitors on rainy nights were rare, unexpected even. She slowly set her cup down and stood, adjusting the warm shawl draped around her shoulders. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath her steps as she walked down the short hallway toward the front door. When she opened it, a cool mist swept into the cottage. The rain fell lightly onto her face, cool and refreshing. But there was no one at the doorstep. No shadow retreating down the path, no figure ducking around the corner, no voice calling out. Only the soft hush of rain. Eleanor stepped forward slightly, letting her gaze sweep across the quiet street. Lanterns glowed through the curtain of rain, illuminating the gentle dance of droplets. Everything looked peaceful, silent, dreamlike. Then she saw it. An envelope, resting neatly on the top step of her porch. Pale cream, sealed with a simple fold, and completely dry despite the falling rain. She reached down to pick it up. The paper was warm to the touch, smooth and faintly scented of lavender. Her name was written on the front in looping, elegant handwriting she didn't recognize. A soft flutter stirred inside her chest. She stepped back inside, closing the door gently behind her. The cottage lights flickered softly against the envelope as she held it. With a slow breath, she opened the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Just one sentence was written inside. If you follow the sound of the rain, you will find what you've been searching for. Her brows lifted slightly. A soft, puzzled smile tugged at her lips. The ink looked freshly written, every letter precise and confident. What had she been searching for? She didn't know. She wasn't even sure she was searching for anything at all. But something about the message made her heart beat, with a strange mixture of curiosity and comfort, as though a gentle hand had touched her shoulder and whispered, "Come see." Eleanor glanced toward the window. The rain had deepened in sound, its pattern more rhythmic, more purposeful, almost like footsteps in the distance. A low thrum echoed from the direction of the shore, a faint chime ringing, just above the sound of the waves. That chime again. It was soft, lingering, almost melodic. She'd heard it faintly before, on other rainy nights, but always dismissed it as something carried by the wind. Tonight, however, it sounded intentional, calling. She walked to her small wooden coat stand, slipped into her boots, and wrapped her shawl more tightly around herself. The message still rested in her hand. She folded it gently and slipped it into her pocket. Then she stepped outside. The rain greeted her immediately, brushing cool droplets across her cheeks and forehead. The air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of wet earth and sea salt. The lanterns along the street flickered warmly, guiding her path as she walked toward the source of the sound. The faint chime echoing near the shoreline. Her boots splashed quietly through shallow puddles. The coastal town felt peaceful, wrapped in a kind of sleepy stillness. Windows glowed softly in the cottages she passed, where families settled into the comfort of warm rooms and evening routines. A dog barked faintly somewhere in the distance, the sound muted by the rain. The world felt contained, hushed, almost magical. The closer she got to the beach, the louder the chime became. Soft, consistent, like someone gently tapping a spoon against a crystal glass. The waves whispered beneath it, and Eleanor felt her heart tug forward with every step. She reached the edge of the pebble beach. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, a dark blanket shimmering under the faint glow of distant lightning. The rain painted everything in liquid silver. There it was, the old pier. It reached out over the water like a wooden bridge into the unknown. Lanterns lined its path, their lights hazy behind drifting mist. Tonight, the pier seemed different, more alive, as if the sea beneath it breathed slower, deeper. The chime rang again. Without hesitation, Eleanor stepped onto the pier. The wooden planks creaked softly beneath her boots, and the rain above her sounded like a gentle, steady applause. She walked toward the center of the pier, where the sound seemed strongest. Halfway down, she stopped. A lantern rested on a bench to her right, its candle burning steadily inside a glass enclosure, untouched by rain. She approached it carefully, noticing something beside it. Another envelope. Her name again. Her heart quickened. She picked it up, opened it slowly, and unfolded the small parchment inside. Not all things lost are gone forever. Some just need the right night to be found. A soft breath escaped her lips. She didn't fully understand the message yet, but the warmth that spread through her chest told her she wasn't meant to understand it now. She was meant to follow. The chime echoed again, this time from the very end of the pier. She lifted her head and saw it. A silhouette standing near the railing, turned toward the sea. An elderly man in a raincoat, the hood down, grey hair dampened against his forehead. He stood still, hands resting calmly on the railing, as if waiting. Eleanor hesitated only a moment before walking slowly toward him. The rain softened with every step she took, almost as if clearing a path for her. When she reached him, he didn't turn immediately. He kept his gaze fixed on the horizon. "You found the letters," he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor swallowed gently. "Did you send them?" The man turned then, offering her a faint, knowing smile. His eyes were kind, blue and deep, like the ocean on a clear day. "I delivered them," he said. "But they weren't written by me." Her breath caught. "Then who did?" He looked back at the sea, a soft wind brushing through the rain. "The sea," he murmured, "keeps the things people forget." And sometimes, his voice softened even more. Sometimes, when the time is right, it returns them. Eleanor felt a slow shiver, not cold, but emotional, run down her spine. "What am I supposed to find?" she whispered. The old man lifted a hand and pointed to the very end of the pier. "There's something waiting for you," he said. "Something that's been waiting a long time." The rain softened further, as if listening. Eleanor looked toward the end of the pier. The outline of a small, wooden box came into view, faint but unmistakable. Her heart began to beat faster. "What is it?" she whispered. The man smiled again, eyes warm. "Go," he said. "The rain will guide you." He and Eleanor walked. The boards of the pier darkened under Eleanor's footsteps, each plank glistening with a thin sheet of rainwater that rippled slightly beneath her weight. The lights behind her, those warm, flickering lanterns, faded softly into the mist the farther she went, until eventually they looked like tiny, distant stars suspended in a drifting cloud. Ahead of her, the far end of the pier stretched into a blend of shadow and seawater, the boundary between wood and ocean becoming harder to see with every step she took. The sound of the rain had changed once again. It was softer here, gentler, almost like it respected the quiet moment she was walking into. Each drop tapped against the railing and her shoulders, but the noise didn't overwhelm her. Instead, it felt guiding, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat she could follow in the darkness. The sea underneath whispered, as though in conversation with the sky, each wave rising and falling with sleepy consistency. Eleanor's breath puffed lightly in the cool air, mingling with the mist. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the strange sensation building inside her. A sense of expectation, of peaceful anticipation, as if something familiar waited at the end of this journey. As she approached, the box became clearer. It was small, no larger than a shoebox, and made of old, weathered wood softened by years of salt and rain. Its edges had rounded over time, and its metal hinge glinted faintly whenever a stray lantern reflection caught it. The wood itself carried the deep brown color of driftwood, polished by nature rather than hands. She paused a few steps away, her heart steady but full. The rain around her drifted into a slow patter. The air held stillness, like the entire night was holding its breath. Eleanor stepped closer. When she placed her fingers on the lid, the wood felt warm. Strangely warm, almost as if someone had just held it in their hands. Her breath caught in her throat, and she lifted the lid gently, the hinge creaking softly in the quiet. Inside lay a neatly folded piece of fabric. Eleanor's lips parted slightly as she reached in and lifted it. The fabric was soft and familiar, beneath her fingertips, light but sturdy. When she unfurled it, a gentle wave of emotion pressed against her chest. It was a handkerchief, embroidered with delicate blue waves and small raindrop patterns along the edges. The stitching was careful, elegant, and unmistakably familiar. Her heart softened, and her fingers trembled as she turned it to look more closely. In the bottom corner, stitched in tiny golden thread, were the initials. Her mother's initials. Her breath wavered. For a long moment, Eleanor just stood there, the rain falling softly around her, while the world beneath her seemed to tilt gently. Her mother had passed many years earlier, and Eleanor had believed all her belongings had been packed away or given to charity. She had forgotten about this handkerchief completely. Forgotten the way her mother used to fold it into her coat pocket whenever they walked along the Brighton shore together, sometimes using it to wipe Eleanor's face when raindrops slid in the wrong direction. Eleanor felt warmth pricking at the corners of her eyes. She held the fabric against her heart, letting her fingers sink into its softness. Behind her, the old man's voice drifted through the rain. She left that here a long time ago. Eleanor turned slowly, still clutching the handkerchief. The man stood a few paces behind her, his raincoat fluttering slightly in the breeze. He approached with calm, measured steps, not intruding, simply walking close enough to share the moment quietly. She knew it would find you, he said gently. Eleanor's voice came out soft, barely audible over the rain. Why? Why here? The man looked toward the sea, the faintest smile touching his lips. Your mother loved this pier, loved rainy nights. She said the rain helped her think clearly. He paused, eyes distant, as if remembering something from long ago. She told me once that the things we leave in the care of the sea are never truly lost. They're simply waiting. Eleanor swallowed, tears finally breaking free, warm and slow on her cheeks. You knew her. The man nodded slowly. Many years ago, before she moved away, before you were born. He turned back to Eleanor. Your mother had a way of seeing things. She believed that certain nights, certain storms, opened doors that usually stayed shut. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, letting the rain and emotions blend together. She used to tell me, she whispered, that the rain carries messages. The man smiled softly, and she wasn't wrong. His gaze drifted down to the handkerchief. Turn it over. Eleanor looked at him briefly, then gently flipped the fabric. Her breath hitched. Stitched in the same golden thread were the words, "If ever you feel lost, follow the rain. It will guide you back to yourself." The world around her blurred. Not from rain, but from the overwhelming tenderness of the moment. The unexpected closeness to the woman she missed so deeply. The message seemed to vibrate in her chest, filling spaces she had long ignored. Eleanor's voice trembled. I didn't know she left anything behind for me. The man sighed lightly, like someone who had carried a secret for many years. She didn't know when you'd find it, only that you would, and that you'd need it when you did. He took a step closer, not enough to overwhelm, just enough to offer his presence. Why now? She asked quietly. Why tonight of all nights? Because tonight, he said softly. You were finally listening. Eleanor pressed the handkerchief to her chest, her breaths uneven but warm. The rain fell more gently now, almost like a soft caress. The old man's expression softened. She loved you fiercely, Eleanor, and she believed that rain has a way of washing away the things we cling to, the things we don't need. She believed it could make space for what truly matters. Eleanor lowered her gaze. I've been feeling lost, she admitted. Voice small, like something inside me has been quiet too long. That's why the rain called to you tonight, the man said. It's why the letters reached your door. Her eyes widened slightly. The sea returned them. He nodded without hesitation. Some nights, the sea remembers more than people do. Lightning flashed far in the distance. A soft glow illuminating the clouds, followed by the faintest murmur of thunder. The sound wasn't frightening. It was comforting, like a long sigh. Eleanor looked at the old man with new curiosity. Who are you? He chuckled softly, lowering his gaze as though suddenly shy. Just someone who listens to the sea, he said. Someone who helps deliver its messages now and then. She studied him for a long moment, the lines on his face shaped by years of wind and salt. His eyes soft but deep. The calm, steady way he stood. "Will I see you again?" she asked gently. The man's smile was patient, kind, and full of something ancient. "Perhaps not, but you'll hear the rain. And that will always be enough." The air shifted. Not abruptly, but subtly, like the night exhaling. The mist thickened, then thinned. A soft breeze brushed past, carrying the faint scent of lavender and sea salt. And when Eleanor blinked, he was gone. Not disappeared dramatically. Not vanished in a burst of light. Simply gone, like a final raindrop sliding quietly off a window pane. Eleanor stood alone at the end of the pier. Though she didn't feel abandoned, she felt full of warmth, memory, presence. She lifted the handkerchief to her face, inhaling deeply. It smelled faintly of old cotton and something sweeter, like the lavender her mother used to keep by the bedside to help her sleep. The rain shifted again, becoming softer, more dreamlike. The waves below whispered an almost melodic rhythm. The lanterns behind her flickered gently, as if urging her patiently to return. With a final glance at the open sea, Eleanor folded the handkerchief carefully, tucking it safely against her heart. Then she turned back toward the pier. Her footsteps were slow and calm, each one grounding her more than the last. She didn't feel confusion anymore, only clarity. A gentle clarity that wrapped around her like a warm shawl. The rain followed her, whispering softly. When she reached the halfway point of the pier, something made her pause. A faint glow near the shoreline. The same soft golden shimmer she had seen earlier, drifting like a floating ember. She recognized it. The chime. It called once more, clearer now, like a lullaby guiding her home. Eleanor smiled softly, letting the warm breeze brush her cheeks. And she followed the sound. First walk with me into the quiet streets of Brighton, where every lantern glows like a warm dream, and every raindrop whispers at Eleanor's steps carried her across the pier with the softest of echoes. Each footfall was cushioned by the wooden planks slick with rain, yet she moved with purpose, guided by the delicate chime that drifted ahead of her. The glow on the shoreline was warmer now, golden and inviting, shimmering through the veil of mist that hugged the sea. It seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the rain, beckoning her forward like a heartbeat in the night. The beach stretched out beneath the dim glow, pebbles darkened by the continuous drizzle. The waves rolled in gently, lapping at the edge of the shore, whispering secrets of the deep. Eleanor felt a sense of familiarity, a quiet recognition that pulled at something deep inside her. Memories of childhood days, long walks with her mother along this very beach, floated unbidden into her mind. The scent of salt water, mixed with rain, brought it all back. The warmth of her mother's hand in hers. The soft laughter shared over skipping stones. The gentle advice whispered on windy nights. She followed the glow, each step lighter than the last, until she arrived at a small wooden post embedded into the sand, almost hidden among the darker shapes of driftwood and rock. Hanging from it was a delicate silver bell, swinging ever so slightly with the breeze. Its surface shimmered faintly, catching the subtle light, and Eleanor felt a sudden pull toward it. Her fingers hovered over the cool metal before she lightly touched it. The bell rang with a soft, crystalline tone, each note resonating with the rhythm of the ocean and the rain, creating a harmony that made the world feel impossibly still and infinite. As she held the bell, memories washed over her. Her mother had always carried a small silver bell, one she claimed could catch the echoes of the rain and turn them into messages for hearts who were listening. Eleanor pressed her hand against it, tears sliding down her cheeks. She whispered softly, "Mum, is that you?" A warm breeze touched her face, brushing against her hair. It wasn't harsh or cold. It was comforting, gentle, like the brush of a hand across a weary shoulder. Eleanor closed her eyes, letting the rain and the wind and the soft bell tones mingle. The night felt alive, breathing with her, cradling her in a cocoon of sound and light. When she opened her eyes, the shoreline looked different, not physically, but emotionally. Every stone, every wave, every drift of mist seemed imbued with life. The ocean was no longer just a body of water. It was memory, it was story, it was connection. And she understood now. This wasn't just a night of rain. This was a night for remembering, for reconnecting, for finding pieces of herself that had been lost or forgotten. She bent down to gather a handful of smooth pebbles, feeling their cool surfaces beneath her fingers. One by one, she rolled them through her palms, letting the rhythm of their roundness soothe her thoughts. The gentle sound of the rain mingled with the chime of the bell and the subtle rush of waves, forming a meditative cadence. Eleanor felt herself exhale, letting go of tension she hadn't realized she'd carried. A faint glow near the pier caught her attention again. She looked up to see the lanterns, faintly flickering, stretched across the wooden beams like distant fireflies. It reminded her of childhood nights, spent watching storms from the windows of the cottage, waiting for the rain to ease into a lullaby. The memory was vivid and warm, and Eleanor smiled softly, pressing the handkerchief closer to her chest. Her thoughts drifted again, like clouds across a grey sky. There was a feeling, almost a whisper, inside her chest that said she wasn't alone. She wasn't really walking this path by herself. Somewhere, in some quiet, hidden place, her mother's presence lingered, watching over her, guiding her. Eleanor's mind opened to the night, to the rain, to the gentle sway of the ocean. She could feel the connection with her mother in every drop that touched her skin, in every wave that rolled ashore, in every soft gust of wind. The sound of the chime grew fainter as she wandered closer to the water's edge, yet it remained, threading its way through the patter of rain. Eleanor knelt by the tide, letting her fingers skim the wet sand. The small waves licked at her fingertips, sending tiny ripples outward. It was as though the ocean itself was responding to her presence, acknowledging her arrival, welcoming her into its secret fold. She remembered the envelope she had received at the cottage. Its simple message had led her here, to this quiet, liminal space where time seemed to stretch and bend. The handkerchief in her hand was no longer just fabric. It was a link, a tangible piece of memory woven with intent. She felt a deep gratitude, not just for the gift, but for the clarity it brought. She wasn't just remembering her mother, she was remembering herself. Her own resilience, her own capacity for wonder, her own ability to feel deeply and wholly. For a long time, Eleanor simply sat on the edge of the beach, letting the rain soak her hair and clothes, letting the cold and warmth mingle in her body, letting the soundscape of the night become a blanket around her. She did not feel the need to move, to speak, to act. She simply existed, fully present, letting the world around her wash over her like a gentle wave. Somewhere behind her, the faint sound of a footstep on the sand made her glance up. The old man from the pier had returned, standing silently a few meters away. He didn't speak, didn't gesture. He simply watched with a quiet patience that somehow felt reassuring. Eleanor nodded at him, a silent acknowledgement, and returned her gaze to the sea. He understood without words. He had always understood. The bell at the post rang again, swaying with the wind, and Eleanor felt a sudden urge to follow the sound along the shoreline. She rose slowly, her feet sinking into the damp sand, and began to walk. The chime guided her in soft, unpredictable bursts, leading her past old driftwood, rounded stones, and small tidal pools reflecting the lantern glow from the pier. Each step brought a sense of rhythm and purpose, each breath a deeper connection to the world around her. As she walked, memories continued to surface: afternoons spent reading under the rain, evenings with her mother humming softly while mending fabrics, nights of whispered stories as the thunder rolled above their cottage. Eleanor realized that the soundscape of this rainy night mirrored those memories. The gentle tapping of rain on the pier, the chime like a lullaby, the whisper of the waves, all working together to create a full tapestry of comfort and nostalgia. At the edge of a small cove, she saw another soft glow. It was faint, barely noticeable, like a reflection of moonlight bouncing off a hidden pool. She approached carefully and noticed an arrangement of smooth pebbles, forming a small heart in the sand. At the center lay a single candle, flickering softly against the damp night. Eleanor's heart swelled as she knelt beside it, recognizing the intention behind such a quiet, thoughtful gesture. Her fingers hovered over the flame, careful not to extinguish it, and she whispered a soft thanks to the night, the rain, the ocean, and most of all, to her mother. The message in the handkerchief, the gentle guidance of the old man, the rhythm of the rain, it all came together in this small, perfect moment. She realized that she had been searching for more than memories or physical reminders. She had been searching for peace, for connection, for a sense of being guided and seen. And here, in the rain-soaked sands of Brighton, she found it. Eleanor stayed by the cove, listening to the waves, the rain, the bell, and the whispering wind. Time seemed irrelevant. Past and present intertwined seamlessly, each drop of water carrying echoes of laughter and love, each ripple of sand holding stories long forgotten. Her mind grew quiet, her heart steady, her soul soothed. Eventually, she rose and continued walking along the shoreline, each step a soft imprint in the wet sand. The bell's chime had faded, but remained in memory, an echo she could carry with her. Eleanor understood that the night wasn't meant to be hurried, that the rain wasn't simply weather, but a guide, a companion, a storyteller. She walked slowly, letting the soundscape wrap around her, letting the cool drizzle become a lullaby for her body and spirit. As she neared the pier once more, the first hints of dawn shimmered faintly on the horizon, though still veiled by clouds. The rain softened into a gentle mist. Eleanor paused and looked back at the beach, the bell, the gentle waves. Everything held in quiet harmony. The night had given her what she hadn't realized. She'd been searching for a sense of rootedness, a sense of presence, a sense of home in both memory and moment. The old man appeared again, silently at her side, and offered no words this time. Eleanor nodded, a simple gesture of gratitude, and together they walked slowly back toward the pier, letting the mist mingle with the remaining rain. The handkerchief rested against her heart, a tangible reminder of love, guidance, and memory, and Eleanor felt a deep, lasting peace settle inside her chest, like the rain had washed away the restless ache she hadn't fully acknowledged. She glanced at the horizon once more. The rain would continue, of course, but it no longer felt like an obstacle. It was a companion, a melody, a guide for nights like this. Eleanor knew she could follow it whenever she felt lost, that it would always lead her back to herself. And as the sun's first faint light struggled to peek through the clouds, Eleanor finally allowed herself to rest, letting the soothing rain, the quiet waves, and the gentle rhythm of the night lull her toward a long, uninterrupted sleep. The chime of the bell, soft and distant, echoed one last time, carrying her dreams safely into the morning. Eleanor awoke to the soft drizzle, still falling outside, though the world had changed subtly. The night had given way to the early hours of morning, and Brighton looked different under the dim grey light of dawn. The pier glistened, slick with rain, and the lanterns that had guided her the night before now flickered faintly, as if they too were waking from a long slumber. The air carried the scent of wet earth and sea salt, comforting and familiar, wrapping around her like a soft blanket. She stretched slowly, letting the sensation of the rain on the windowpane sink into her skin. The handkerchief lay neatly folded beside her on the table, a delicate reminder of the night's quiet magic. Eleanor ran her fingers over its soft fabric, feeling the familiar golden thread of her mother's initials beneath her touch. Every thread seemed to hum softly, vibrating with memories she hadn't realized she still carried. The laughter of her mother, the gentle stories told on rainy nights, the warmth of hand-holding on windy walks along the Brighton shore. She rose and moved to the window, her eyes tracing the quiet streets below. Few people were awake at this hour, only a few silhouettes moved with umbrellas or hurried steps toward early shops and cafes. The rain had slowed into a gentle mist, and the ocean mirrored the grey sky, waves rolling lazily onto the beach. Eleanor felt an unexpected sense of serenity. The city and sea seemed suspended, as if waiting with her for something that had not yet fully revealed itself. Her mind wandered back to the wooden box, the bell, and the old man who had guided her with words as soft as the rain. Though he had disappeared into the mist without explanation, his presence lingered in the quiet corners of her awareness. It wasn't a presence of fear or obligation, but of reassurance, of subtle guidance. He had been a messenger, perhaps even a guardian of the messages carried by the sea and rain. The thought made Eleanor smile, feeling the gentle pulse of her heartbeat align with the rhythm of the morning waves. With a soft sigh, she decided to follow the shoreline again, compelled by a mixture of curiosity and instinct. The sand beneath her boots was cool and damp, leaving faint imprints that were quickly erased by the gentle retreat of each wave. The mist carried a fine shimmer of light, illuminating seashells and smooth pebbles like scattered gems. Eleanor bent occasionally to touch them, to appreciate the tactile serenity of the scene, the textures grounding her, the rhythm of waves soothing her thoughts. As she walked further along the beach, she spotted a narrow path leading into a small, sheltered grove of trees that bordered the shore. The canopy of wet leaves glistened faintly, droplets clinging like tiny diamonds. Eleanor felt drawn to this hidden enclave, as if the rain itself was guiding her to a secret. She stepped into the grove, letting the rain kiss her shoulders lightly. The soft sound of water dripping from leaves and pooling along the forest floor mingled with the distant ocean, creating a natural symphony that seemed almost composed for her alone. Deeper into the grove, Eleanor discovered a small clearing. The center was dominated by a shallow pool, formed from the rainfall, perfectly still except for occasional ripples. At the edge of the pool lay more smooth stones, arranged in a pattern that suggested intention rather than coincidence. Eleanor knelt, tracing the circular shape with her fingers. Each stone seemed to pulse faintly beneath her touch, sending a quiet vibration through her hands and up her arms, a sensation almost like heartbeat meeting heartbeat. She noticed a faint glow in the center of the pool, subtle but persistent, as if the water itself contained a secret. Kneeling closer, Eleanor saw that the glow emanated from a small cluster of bioluminescent algae, disturbed by the movement of a gentle stream into the pool. The light shimmered and danced across the water's surface, creating shapes that reminded her of the waves embroidered on her mother's handkerchief. Eleanor inhaled deeply, feeling a profound connection between the night, the rain, and this hidden world of quiet miracles. The soft chime returned, distant but clear. Eleanor stood, letting the sound guide her through the grove and toward the next part of the shoreline. She understood instinctively that this was a continuation of the journey she had begun the previous night, not just a path to a physical destination, but a path to inner discovery. Each sound of the bell, each gentle ripple in the pool, each drop of rain was a piece of the story being written in real time, only for her. As she emerged from the grove, the sea opened before her again, stretching infinitely under a lighter sky. The waves rolled rhythmically, larger than before, as if awakening fully with the morning. Eleanor spotted a small wooden jetty jutting out into the water. She remembered that as a child, she and her mother had used to walk along similar structures, dipping their fingers into the cool water and watching small fish dart below. The jetty seemed abandoned now, yet inviting, as if waiting for someone willing to follow the rain and the chime. She stepped onto the jetty slowly, feeling the wood shift beneath her weight. Each plank was slick with moisture, but Eleanor's careful steps allowed her to move confidently. The chime sounded closer now, echoing across the water in soft, melodious tones. She followed it to the very end, where a small, weathered crate rested. Its surface was rough and aged, softened by countless nights of rain and sea spray. Opening the crate revealed a collection of items Eleanor did not expect. Her mother's old journal, a pair of seashell earrings Eleanor remembered wearing as a child, and a small, handwritten note. The journal was well worn, pages yellowed and edges softened by time, but the ink was still legible. Eleanor felt a surge of emotion, her heart swelling as she held it in her hands. The journal seemed like a bridge across years, a direct line to her mother's thoughts, feelings, and memories. She opened the note first. In delicate handwriting, she recognized instantly her mother had written, "If ever you feel lost, remember that the sea remembers. Follow the rain, and it will bring you back to yourself. Love always, Mom." Tears streamed down Eleanor's cheeks, mixing with the rain. She clutched the note to her heart, then opened the journal. The pages contained observations about the ocean, reflections on life, and stories Eleanor had never heard before. Stories that felt intimate, tender, and imbued with a deep, abiding love. Each page was a thread weaving her mother's presence back into her life, a lifeline connecting past, present, and future. She sat at the end of the jetty for hours, reading and rereading the journal, listening to the rhythm of the rain, and letting the waves carry her thoughts. Each sound, each word, each drop of rain seemed purposeful, part of a carefully orchestrated ballet that had been designed to help her find peace. The world beyond the shoreline faded, leaving only the gentle pulse of her own heart and the eternal rhythm of the sea. Eventually, Eleanor rose and placed the journal, the note, and the earrings carefully back in the crate. She felt a calm determination to keep these items safe, to honor her mother's memory, and to embrace the lessons the night had brought her. The rain was lighter now, more like a soft mist than a downpour, and the chime faded into the distance, leaving only the whisper of waves and the sigh of the wind. Eleanor stepped back onto the shore, letting the damp sand cushion her steps. She turned for one last look at the jetty, the crate, and the endless ocean beyond. Gratitude filled her chest, deep and encompassing. She understood now that the night had been about more than messages or objects. It had been about finding the peace and guidance that had been waiting inside her all along. The sun's first pale rays began to filter through the clouds, painting the horizon in gentle pinks and golds. The rain continued, now merely a soft accompaniment to the awakening day. Eleanor felt a sense of completion, yet also a quiet readiness to carry the lessons of the night forward into her life. Each breath she drew was filled with clarity, connection, and a tender reminder that the world could be both vast and intimately comforting. As she walked back toward her cottage, Eleanor let the rhythm of the sea and the lingering whispers of the rain accompany her. Every step reminded her that she had found what she had been searching for. Not just her mother's memory, but a renewed sense of herself, calm and resilient. The world had shifted gently around her, offering solace in the quietest ways. And Eleanor felt a profound gratitude for the night, for the rain, for Brighton, and for the mysterious ways in which guidance appears when one is ready to see it. The mist drifted softly across the streets as she entered her cottage. She placed the handkerchief, journal, and note in a small wooden chest beside her bed. The rain tapped gently on the window pane, a slow, steady rhythm, like a lullaby composed for her. Eleanor brewed another cup of chamomile tea, wrapped herself in a soft shawl, and sat near the window, watching the day unfold gradually. She leaned her head against the cushion, letting the warmth seep through her. Her eyelids grew heavy, and the comforting sounds of the rain, waves, and distant city merged into a harmonious lullaby. Eleanor realized that the night's journey had been transformative. And though the old man and the chimes were gone, the memory and guidance they offered would stay with her forever. The rain continued, gentle and persistent, as Eleanor drifted into a long, serene sleep, cradled by the rhythm of Brighton on this rainy day. Eleanor awoke to the soft patter of rain against her window, a familiar lullaby that had become almost like a heartbeat over the past nights. She stretched slowly, feeling the weight of sleep and dreams lift from her shoulders. The handkerchief lay folded neatly beside her, the journal and note resting safely in the small wooden chest she had chosen. A sense of serenity filled her. The night's journey had left her lighter, as if the rain had washed away long, held uncertainties, and left only clarity. The early morning was quiet, broken only by the occasional distant gull and the gentle waves rolling onto the beach. Eleanor dressed warmly, pulling on her boots and shawl, and stepped outside. The streets of Brighton glistened with moisture, reflecting lantern light in the lingering mist. The world felt paused, suspended in a perfect balance between night and day, between rain and clearing skies. She breathed deeply, letting the damp, salty air fill her lungs, and began walking toward the shoreline once more. The familiar path to the pier felt like a homecoming. Each step on the wet cobblestones echoed softly, blending with the gentle hiss of the waves and the rhythmic patter of raindrops. The town was slowly waking. A few early risers carried umbrellas, their reflections dancing in puddles that mirrored the grey sky. Eleanor's heart felt steady and light, a soft warmth blooming through her chest as she neared the pier. At the end of the pier, she paused to look out over the ocean. The waves shimmered under the faint morning light, moving in quiet, predictable rhythms. The old wooden planks beneath her boots were slick, but she felt grounded. Eleanor knelt, dipping her fingers into the cool, brackish water, letting it swirl around her hands. She could still hear faint echoes of the chime from the past nights, carried in memory rather than sound. It was a comforting hum, reminding her that the magic she had experienced wasn't confined to a single moment. As she sat on the pier, Eleanor opened her mother's journal once more. She read passages aloud, her voice soft against the backdrop of rain and waves. Her mother's words were alive in her hands, full of gentle wisdom, laughter, and insight. The journal spoke of life's simple joys, of observing the world patiently, of listening to the subtle rhythms of nature. Eleanor realized that the experiences she had just lived, the letters, the bell, the hidden cove, were all echoes of her mother's philosophy, lessons in how to live fully, how to find peace and guidance within the chaos of the world. A light breeze carried the scent of wet wood and sea spray, mingling with the faint lavender that still clung to the handkerchief. Eleanor breathed it in, savoring the memory and the presence it evoked. She traced her fingers over the fabric, feeling the initials and patterns, and allowed herself to remember not just her mother's love, but the warmth of their shared moments, the lessons imparted quietly and lovingly. She realized that these memories were not just nostalgic. They were tools guiding her forward into the life she would continue to build. After some time, Eleanor rose, letting the journal rest beside her. She walked slowly along the pier, listening to the gentle creak of the wood and the soft sigh of the waves. The rain had eased into a mist, delicate and almost imperceptible, leaving the world around her feeling ethereal. Every reflection on the water, every shimmer on the wet planks, every small ripple in the ocean seemed imbued with meaning, as if the world itself acknowledged her journey and her newfound peace. Returning to the beach, Eleanor noticed the small cove where she had discovered the bioluminescent pool. She knelt by the water, allowing her fingers to skim its surface. The algae shimmered faintly, reacting to her touch and reflecting the first hints of dawn. She smiled softly, recognizing the pattern of interconnectedness that had unfolded over the past nights. the rain, the sea, the pier, the bell, the letters, the journal, all parts of a single story guiding her toward understanding, toward clarity, toward serenity. The soft chime, once distant and elusive, seemed to hum in her memory again, a reminder that guidance often comes in subtle forms. Eleanor whispered a quiet thank you to the night, to the rain, and to the unseen presence of her mother and the old man who had guided her. She realized that the journey was not just about finding objects or messages, but about learning to listen, to observe, and to trust the rhythms of life. The tide began to rise gently, lapping closer to her feet. Eleanor walked along the shoreline, letting the water touch her toes and feeling the smooth stones beneath her boots. The gentle repetition of waves, the soft hiss of rain, and the distant call of a gull created a meditative symphony, calming her mind and soothing her spirit. She understood now that Brighton, especially on rainy days, was a living teacher, offering lessons in patience, observation, and connection. Eventually, Eleanor returned to her cottage. She placed the handkerchief, journal, and note back in the chest, closing it carefully. She brewed a fresh cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into her hands, and settled by the window. The rain had softened to a whisper, the morning light filtering through the clouds and illuminating the room with a gentle glow. Eleanor wrapped herself in her shawl and exhaled slowly, feeling fully present in the moment. Time seemed to dissolve. Hours passed in a quiet, comforting flow. Eleanor reflected on the past nights, the experiences that had shifted something deep within her. She realized that the rain was not just a weather pattern. It was a companion, a messenger, a guide. It had shown her how to reconnect with herself, with memory, and with the gentle rhythms of life. Each drop carried a story. Each wave whispered a secret, and each breeze offered a soft caress of reassurance. By midday, the rain had almost completely ceased, leaving the streets of Brighton sparkling and clean. Eleanor ventured outside once more, walking slowly along the pier and beach, savoring the final moments of the journey. She paused to listen, to watch, and to feel the world around her. Every detail, the creak of wood, the shimmer of water, the scent of wet earth, seemed infused with quiet magic. She realized that while the night had ended, its lessons and serenity would stay with her always. Eleanor returned home one last time that morning, feeling a profound sense of peace. She opened the window and let the mist drift in, letting the fresh air mingle with the lingering scent of tea and lavender. She settled into her favorite chair, the journal and handkerchief beside her, and closed her eyes. The gentle rhythm of the waves and the soft memory of rain created a lullaby that carried her into a deep, restorative sleep. In her dreams, Brighton remained drenched in gentle rain, the pier stretching endlessly, the bell chiming softly, and the ocean whispering secrets that only she could understand. Eleanor walked through this dreamscape with confidence and serenity, guided by the love of her mother and the quiet magic of the world around her. Each step, each breath, Each sound reaffirmed the connection she had rediscovered with herself, with memory, and with the natural rhythm of life. The rain continued, persistent and soft, but it no longer felt like an obstacle. It was music, guidance, and comfort. Eleanor knew that no matter what storms came in the future, she could always follow the rain to find clarity, peace, and connection. And with that knowledge, her heart swelled with gratitude and quiet joy. As the day grew brighter, Eleanor finally rose, carrying the lessons of the night and the early morning with her. She moved through the cottage with slow, deliberate care, savoring each moment, aware that the magic of Brighton on a rainy day was not bound to a single night. It was always present, waiting for anyone willing to listen, watch, and follow. The soft, steady rain, the distant chime, and the whispering waves became a lullaby, not just for sleep, but for life itself, a reminder that even in quiet moments, the world holds stories of love, guidance, and gentle wonder. Eleanor smiled, her heart full, her spirit calm, and her mind clear. Brighton, the rain, the sea, and the night had given her a gift far greater than words could express. A deep and lasting peace, the kind that lingers long after the rain has stopped. And so Eleanor sat by her window, sipping tea, watching the mist rise from the wet streets, letting the rain's memory fill every corner of her being, and finally, letting herself rest completely, knowing that the world and her heart were in perfect harmony. The rain had returned in the late afternoon, soft and insistent, wrapping Brighton in its familiar silver, blue veil. Eleanor stepped outside once more, drawn by the gentle rhythm of falling drops. The streets shimmered with reflections of lanterns and shop windows, and the scent of wet cobblestone mingled with salt and seaweed. Each step she took was accompanied by the whisper of water underfoot, creating a cadence that felt like an echo of her own heartbeat. She wandered along the shoreline, noticing the subtle changes in the beach since her last visit. Driftwood had shifted, forming new shapes. Pebbles glistened like tiny gems under the diffuse light. Small tidal pools mirrored the grey sky above. Eleanor knelt to examine one, marveling at how perfectly still it was, as if the world had held its breath. Tiny fish darted beneath the surface, their scales catching the dim light, while the soft patter of rain on the pool's edge created a delicate percussion. Her mind wandered as she traced the edge of the pool with her fingertips. Memories of childhood and her mother came back in waves. Afternoons spent collecting shells, evenings reading aloud by candlelight, nights listening to the distant sea through the open window. Eleanor realized that Brighton itself felt like a living memory. Each rainstorm, each wave, each pebble whispering fragments of her past. It was as if the town and the ocean had conspired to hold her mother's presence in every corner, waiting for Eleanor to notice. Further along the shore, Eleanor spotted a narrow, winding path that led into a small grove of coastal trees. The branches hung heavy with rain, droplets slipping to the ground like tiny falling stars. The air was cooler here, richer with the scent of wet leaves and earth, and Eleanor felt drawn to explore. Each step on the soft, muddy ground released the subtle aroma of forest and sea combined. The grove seemed almost enchanted. An intimate space hidden from the bustle of Brighton, perfect for quiet reflection. As she walked deeper, the soft chime returned, more distinct this time. Eleanor followed the sound, her heart light but attentive. It led her to a small clearing, where a natural spring had formed from the rainwater. The water shimmered faintly, reflecting the green canopy above, and the chime seemed to emanate from a delicate wind bell hanging from one of the branches. Its sound was soft, hypnotic, and Eleanor paused, closing her eyes to let it wash over her. Kneeling by the spring, Eleanor dipped her hands into the cool water. She marveled at the clarity, the gentle motion of the ripples, and the way the rain seemed to dance across the surface. She realized that every drop of water, every sound of the wind, and every ripple in the spring mirrored the larger rhythm of life, a rhythm she had been learning to follow. Eleanor whispered a quiet thank you to the night, the grove, and the sea, letting her presence become one with the stillness around her. As she sat by the spring, Eleanor noticed something unusual, a small, smooth stone with an unusual blue hue resting at the edge of the water. She picked it up, turning it over in her hand. The stone was warm, almost as if it had absorbed the essence of the sun from a distant day. On closer inspection, delicate carvings were etched into its surface, tiny spirals and waves that reminded her of the patterns embroidered on her mother's handkerchief. Eleanor felt a pulse of recognition in her chest. It was as if the stone was a message, a tangible echo of her mother's love and the guidance she had begun to follow. The chime rang again, softer now, and Eleanor understood instinctively that she should continue. She rose, leaving the stone carefully by the spring, and followed the faint path that led toward the cliffs overlooking the sea. The rain had slowed to a misty drizzle, and the sky carried the soft pastel hues of the approaching evening. The cliffs were steep but inviting, each step revealing the rugged beauty of Brighton's coast. Waves crashed below, sending salty spray into the mist, and Eleanor felt exhilarated by the interplay of wind, water, and rain. At the top of the cliffs, she discovered a small wooden bench facing the horizon. It had been worn smooth by years of rain and salt, but it offered the perfect vantage point to observe the ocean. Eleanor sat down, wrapping her shawl tightly around her, and listened. The waves crashed rhythmically, the rain fell gently, and the faint chime continued to echo somewhere behind her. Here, she felt the full scope of the world, the vastness of the ocean, the power of nature, and the intricate beauty of small details. She pulled the journal from her bag, reading passages aloud, letting her mother's words mingle with the sound of waves and rain. Eleanor realized that the journal had been more than a collection of memories. It was a guide to living fully, to observing quietly, to listening to the subtle language of the world. Her mother's voice, soft yet insistent, urged her to notice the patterns of life, to honor the moments, and to trust the quiet guidance around her. As evening deepened, the sky darkened, and the rain grew slightly stronger. Eleanor felt a serene energy enveloping her. She thought of the bell, the letters, the handkerchief, and the glowing spring. Each experience had been a gentle step toward understanding herself and the world she inhabited. The rain, once merely a weather pattern, now felt like a companion, a guide, a reminder that even in moments of solitude, she was connected to something larger than herself. A distant light flickered along the horizon, subtle yet noticeable. Eleanor recognized the soft glow as coming from a small, secluded lighthouse she had often seen as a child from the cliffs. Intrigued, she decided to approach it, feeling a magnetic pull. The path down to the lighthouse was winding and damp, but Eleanor moved, carefully letting the sound of rain and waves guide her. Each step was deliberate, each breath measured, and she felt a deep sense of alignment with the world around her. Reaching the lighthouse, Eleanor paused at the base, noticing its weathered stones and the faint warmth of its lantern. She stepped inside, greeted by the soft creak of wooden stairs and the faint scent of salt and candle wax. The light above rotated slowly, casting long shadows that danced across the spiral staircase. Eleanor ascended slowly, each step accompanied by the rhythmic chime that had guided her through Brighton's rain-soaked streets and hidden groves. At the top, she emerged onto the platform. The full expanse of the ocean stretched out before her. The waves crashed with power and grace. The rain fell softly, and the horizon seemed infinite. Eleanor felt a profound connection. Her heart, the sea, the rain, and the wind all synchronized in a quiet symphony. She realized that the lighthouse, with its steady, unwavering beam, symbolized clarity, guidance, and hope. It mirrored the lessons she had been learning: to follow the signals of life, to trust the unseen, and to navigate storms with calm and patience. Eleanor leaned against the railing, the wind tugging at her shawl and hair, and closed her eyes. She listened to the rain, the waves, and the distant chime, letting the combined rhythm guide her thoughts. Here, atop the lighthouse, she understood that her journey in Brighton was far from over. The rain would continue to lead her, revealing hidden corners, quiet mysteries, and gentle truths that awaited discovery. Each step, each sound, each soft touch of wind was a continuation of the story, a narrative written not in words alone, but in experience, observation, and presence. Time blurred as Eleanor remained on the lighthouse platform, letting the evening and rain merge into a seamless flow. She felt a renewed curiosity, an eagerness to follow wherever the rain and chime might lead next. The city below, the cliffs, the sea, and the misted horizon were all elements of a larger journey she had only begun to understand. Eleanor realized that she was no longer simply following her mother's memory. She was following her own intuition. Guided by the patterns and rhythms she had learned to recognize. And as the rain continued to fall, Eleanor allowed herself to fully embrace the unknown, confident that every step, every drop, and every sound was part of the quiet, expansive, and infinitely beautiful story of Brighton on a rainy day. Eleanor stayed atop the lighthouse, well into the early evening, letting the rhythm of rain and waves sink into her bones. The wind tugged playfully at her shawl, carrying with it the faint scent of distant flowers, wet earth, and the endless sea. Every breath she drew seemed to merge with the world around her, blurring the boundary between herself and the landscape. She felt as though she were no longer merely walking through Brighton, but moving within a living, breathing story that the city, the rain, and the ocean were telling just for her. Finally, she descended the spiral staircase, each creak of the wood echoing softly in the hollow chamber. The lantern above rotated, casting slanting beams across the rough stone walls, illuminating the small cracks and imperfections that gave the lighthouse its character. Eleanor marveled at how, despite years of storms, wind, and rain, the lighthouse stood strong, a symbol of resilience, guiding those who wandered, just as the rain had guided her. Outside, the drizzle had softened into a delicate mist. Eleanor walked along the rocky cliff path, letting her eyes adjust to the dimming light. The cliffs were jagged but beautiful, carved by centuries of wind and waves. Pebbles shifted underfoot, sending tiny sprays of mist with every step. Eleanor breathed deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs and invigorate her spirit. The chime she had followed seemed to have grown fainter, more like a memory of sound than an active call, yet its presence reassured her. A short distance along the path, she discovered a hidden alcove carved naturally into the cliffside. The space was sheltered, surrounded by moss-covered rocks, and overlooked a secluded stretch of beach. Eleanor stepped inside, the mist curling around her like a soft veil. She noticed that the sand beneath her feet was unusually smooth, almost polished by the constant touch of the waves. Kneeling, she pressed her fingers into it and felt the cool graininess, marveling at how the world held texture, rhythm, and life even in its quietest corners. The alcove seemed to invite her into stillness. Eleanor settled down on a smooth rock, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She could hear the gentle hiss of waves breaking below, the faint rustle of wind through nearby shrubs, and the soft patter of rain that had returned in a fine drizzle. The ocean stretched infinitely before her, a shifting canvas of greys and blues, and Eleanor felt as though she were perched at the very edge of a secret universe. She opened the journal again, letting her mother's words mingle with the rhythm of the waves. Each page was a thread, connecting her past to her present, memories to experiences, love to understanding. Eleanor read aloud softly, her voice blending with the natural symphony around her. The words spoke of patience, observation, and attentiveness, themes she realized had been guiding her journey all along. A movement caught her eye. Across the secluded beach, a small figure emerged, carrying an umbrella and moving with careful, deliberate steps. Eleanor squinted through the mist and rain, realizing it was a young woman, unfamiliar yet carrying a similar sense of purpose in her pace. As she approached, Eleanor noticed that the woman seemed attuned to the same rhythms. Each step measured, each glance intentional, as if she too was listening to the whispers of Brighton in the rain. The woman stopped a few feet away, smiling gently. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" she asked, her voice calm and melodic, blending effortlessly with the soundscape of rain and waves. Eleanor returned the smile, feeling no surprise at this unexpected encounter. "It is," she replied softly, quiet but full of life. The woman nodded, her eyes reflecting the grey light of the mist. "I come here often when I need clarity," she said. "The rain, the sea, they have a way of telling us what we need to hear, if we just listen." Eleanor felt a spark of recognition, a subtle connection forming. "I know exactly what you mean," she said. "It feels like the world itself is guiding you." The woman glanced toward the cliffs, and then at Eleanor. "Perhaps it is," she said gently. "Or perhaps we are learning to guide ourselves through what the world offers. Sometimes, the rain is just a teacher, and we are the students." They sat together for a while, letting the rain envelop them. Each drop seemed like a soft punctuation in a conversation beyond words, a dialogue with the waves, the wind, and the misted air. Eleanor shared fragments of her journey: the handkerchief, the letters, the bell, and the journal. The woman listened with quiet attentiveness, nodding occasionally, letting Eleanor's words float into the mist without interruption. "The lighthouse," Eleanor finally said. It felt like more than just a building. It was a guide, a reminder of clarity and resilience. "I've never felt so connected to something before." The woman smiled knowingly. "Many places carry that energy, if we are ready to see it. Rain teaches us to notice, to feel, to slow down. The world has rhythms and stories everywhere. You just have to follow the sound of what calls to you." Eleanor thought about the bell, now faint in her memory. It had guided her through hidden groves, along cliffs, and through misted paths. Every time she had followed it, she had discovered something deeper within herself. Memories, reflections, emotions she hadn't acknowledged, truths she had yet to fully understand. A quiet moment stretched between them. The rain fell softly, the waves whispered below, and the mist thickened, making the world feel smaller yet infinitely vast. Eleanor realized that while she had begun this journey, seeking a connection to her mother, it had evolved into something greater. A reconnection to herself, to life, and to the quiet magic in the spaces around her. "You've walked far," the woman said after a while, breaking the silence. "And yet, I think your journey is only beginning. The rain has guided you here, but there are still places to explore, lessons to uncover, and rhythms to understand. Brighton holds them all for those who listen." Eleanor nodded, feeling a swell of anticipation. "I want to keep walking," she said. "I want to follow." everything the rain has to teach me." The woman smiled and stood, gesturing toward the path along the cliffs. "Then keep going. The world is patient, and the rain will lead you where you need to be." As Eleanor resumed her walk, the cliffs and beach seemed to transform under her gaze. Each wave carried a story, each gust of wind a secret, each drip of rain a message. She noticed patterns she hadn't before. The way the tide shifted rhythmically with the moon, the subtle interplay of light and shadow on wet stones, the soft resonance of rain against leaves and driftwood. Every detail felt intentional, as if the world itself had become a living guide. She wandered into a narrow inlet where waves lapped against mossy rocks, creating a melody of water and stone. Eleanor knelt to touch the surface, feeling the cool, flowing current slip through her fingers. She reflected on the past nights, the bell, the journal, the handkerchief, and now the gentle guidance of strangers who seemed attuned to the same hidden energies. Each moment had been a stepping stone, a thread weaving together the narrative of discovery, connection, and serenity. Time seemed suspended as Eleanor followed the sound of distant waves, the faint chime lingering in her memory. The sky darkened gradually, shifting from muted grey to the soft indigo of evening. Rain fell in a delicate curtain, misting the shoreline and cliffs, and Eleanor felt fully immersed in the sensory tapestry of Brighton at night. Eventually, she arrived at another hidden cove, smaller than the others but no less magical. The beach was smooth, almost glass-like, reflecting the faint light of the rain and sky above. In the center of the sand lay a driftwood arch, naturally formed but beautifully symmetrical. Eleanor approached it, feeling a sense of reverence. Stepping beneath it, she felt the rain fall in a perfect, soothing rhythm, as if the arch itself had been placed there to mark a threshold, an entrance into deeper understanding, into the heart of the world she had been learning to navigate. She paused beneath the arch, closed her eyes, and let the rain, waves, and wind surround her. Eleanor understood now that her journey in Brighton was about presence, observation, and trust. The trust that life, nature, and even chance encounters would guide her in the right direction. The rain had not just led her through the city, it had led her to herself, helping her uncover layers of memory, reflection, and clarity she had long ignored. A soft chime echoed faintly, carried by the wind. Eleanor smiled, recognizing it as a signal, not of an ending, but of continued exploration. The night, the rain, and Brighton itself still held stories to uncover, patterns to notice, and lessons to learn. She took a deep breath, savoring the cool, wet air, and began walking once more along the beach, letting the rain guide her step by step, wave by wave, toward whatever secrets awaited her next. The rain had softened into a gentle mist by the time Eleanor wandered past the driftwood arch. The cove behind her disappeared into a veil of silver fog, leaving the beach empty, quiet, and full of possibility. Each step on the wet sand produced a soft, rhythmic squelch, blending with the distant, hypnotic roar of waves. Eleanor felt a serene anticipation, an understanding that Brighton still held hidden corners and quiet mysteries meant for those who listened closely. She continued along the shoreline, noticing subtle changes in the landscape. Small tide pools reflected the dim, misty light, like tiny mirrors scattered along the sand. Occasionally, a crab scuttled across, pausing to assess her presence before disappearing beneath the water. Eleanor knelt by one pool, tracing the tiny ripples created by a raindrop. The patterns reminded her of the spirals on the blue stone she had found days before. She realized that even the smallest details, the water, the sand, the stones, were alive with stories waiting to be noticed. As she walked, Eleanor spotted the faint outline of a hidden path that snaked up the cliffs. Moss and wet leaves covered the ground, creating a soft, slippery carpet. Curiosity guided her up the incline. Each step brought a new perspective, the cove shrinking behind her, the ocean stretching infinitely ahead, and the misted horizon blending sea and sky. The rain clung to her hair and shawl, and Eleanor welcomed the feeling, as though it were washing away the remnants of fear, doubt, and distraction that had lingered in her mind. Near the top, she found a small wooden platform that appeared to have been built for observation. From this vantage point, the city of Brighton seemed both distant and intimately close. Lights glimmered faintly through the mist, lanterns flickering along streets and piers. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, and Eleanor felt a deep sense of connection to the world. She realized that the city, the cliffs, and the sea were not just physical spaces. They were mirrors for her own thoughts, emotions, and reflections. Eleanor sat on the platform, letting the rain drip gently from the edges of her shawl. She opened the journal once more, reading passages aloud. Her mother's words seemed to take on a new depth here. In the middle of the mist and rain, overlooking the endless ocean, the words spoke of patience, observation, and the quiet art of noticing the unseen. Eleanor realized that each part of her journey, every cove, every bell, every chime, every secret corner of Brighton, had been leading her toward this understanding. The world communicates if one is willing to listen. A soft, unexpected noise caught her attention. A light footfall on the wet wooden platform. Eleanor looked up and saw a small figure emerging from the mist, a young boy, no older than 10 or 11, carrying a small wooden boat. His hair was soaked from the rain, and his eyes sparkled with curiosity and mischief. He stopped a few feet away, bowing his head politely but not afraid. "Hello," Eleanor said gently, smiling. "That's a very fine boat you have there." The boy nodded shyly. "It's for the tide," he said, pointing toward the sea below. "I like to see where it goes." Eleanor felt a pang of recognition. His fascination with the journey, the water, and the unknown mirrored her own. "Do you think it will find its way?" she asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe. But that's okay. Sometimes it's just the ride that matters." Eleanor's lips curved into a quiet smile. The simplicity of his wisdom struck her. She realized that she had spent so long seeking meaning in objects, symbols, and memories, that she had almost forgotten the lesson in his words. Sometimes the act of moving forward, the experience itself, is the answer. She knelt beside him, watching as he carefully placed the wooden boat on the edge of the platform. The rain had softened into a light mist, barely disturbing the surface of the tide pools below. With a gentle push, he sent the boat floating into a small stream that led to the sea. Eleanor watched its journey, marveling at how it bobbed, twisted, and turned with the currents. It felt symbolic, like her own path, guided but unpredictable, full of turns and surprises, yet moving steadily forward. "You have a good heart," Eleanor said quietly. "Following the tide, noticing the little things. That's a very special way to live." The boy grinned and turned to her. "Sometimes the tide teaches more than we expect," he said. "It listens to what we do and then shows us where to go." Ilana laughed softly, a sound mingling with the gentle roar of waves and the misty drizzle. She realized that Brighton's magic lay not only in hidden corners or glowing bells, but in these small, unexpected encounters. Each person, each interaction, each observation was a thread weaving together a broader tapestry. A living story that connected all who took the time to notice. The boy waved goodbye and ran back down the cliffside path, the wooden boat now lost to the tide. Eleanor stayed seated for a long time, letting the sound of the waves, rain, and wind fill her mind. The ocean seemed to whisper a profound truth. Life was not only about seeking answers, but also about experiencing the journey, trusting the rhythm, and noticing the small wonders along the way. Eventually, Eleanor rose and continued along the cliff path. The rain had thinned further, leaving the air crisp and clean. The soft mist lingered, clinging to her shawl and hair, and the sea below shimmered like a sheet of silver. Each step felt like a meditation, each breath an act of presence. Eleanor understood now that her journey was not merely about reconnecting with her mother, but about learning to follow the world with attentiveness, curiosity, and calm. She wandered into another small cove, one she had not noticed before. The sand was dark and smooth, and the waves rolled gently onto the shore. A cluster of smooth, polished stones lay near the water's edge, arranged almost deliberately, as though someone had paused there before her and left a small gift. Eleanor knelt to examine them. The stones radiated quiet energy, and she felt a deep sense of peace. The chime that had guided her for nights now lingered faintly in memory, a gentle reminder that she was being led, even when the guidance was subtle. Eleanor allowed herself to lie down on the sand, letting the misty rain fall over her. The sky above was a canvas of soft indigo, the horizon blurred between sea and clouds. She closed her eyes and listened. The rhythmic lap of waves, the faint patter of rain, and the whispering wind created a meditative symphony. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt entirely unhurried, entirely present, and entirely at peace. In that moment, she understood the essence of her journey. Brighton, the rain, the cliffs, the sea, the people, and the hidden groves. All were teachers, guides, and companions. The chime, the handkerchief, the journal, and even the wooden boat were symbols, not of endings, but of continuity, presence, and quiet wonder. Eleanor realized that she had discovered a secret that would remain with her forever. The ability to follow the world's subtle rhythms, trust its guidance, and find serenity in both motion and stillness. The evening deepened, and the rain finally ceased, leaving the air fragrant and pure. Eleanor rose, brushing sand from her shawl, and began walking slowly back toward the cliffs. The city lights glimmered faintly through the mist, lanterns casting warm reflections across wet cobblestones. Every step felt grounded, deliberate, and comforting. She carried with her the memories of the night, the lessons of the rain, and the gentle reassurance that her journey, like the tide, was ongoing. As Eleanor reached the top of the cliffs, she paused to look back at the cove and the sea below. The world felt infinite yet intimate, vast yet tender. She inhaled deeply, letting the air fill her lungs and the calm settle into her heart. The soft memory of the chime, the boy and his wooden boat, and the gentle rhythm of the waves lingered with her, weaving a thread of serenity that would carry her into the nights to come. Eleanor turned toward the city, her path illuminated by the faint glow of lanterns and moonlight reflecting off wet streets. She walked slowly, deliberately savoring each sensation, knowing that Brighton on a rainy night had revealed not only hidden corners of the city, but hidden corners of herself. Each step she took was a continuation, an affirmation, a soft meditation in motion. The mist clung to her shawl and hair as she descended toward the town, distant lighthouse beam, rotating steadily in the background. Eleanor understood now that guidance could come in many forms: bells, rain, tides, encounters, quiet reflections, and that each was valid, each important, and each deeply nourishing. She felt a gentle warmth in her chest, a lightness in her step, and a profound connection to the world she had learned to follow with care. And as the night deepened, Eleanor finally allowed herself to rest once more, seated on a quiet bench near the pier. The waves whispered, the rain hummed faintly in memory, and the soft mist enveloped her. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of Brighton on a rainy night carry her into a calm, deep, and restorative sleep, knowing that tomorrow would hold new paths, new stories, and the gentle guidance of rain, always present, always leading. The morning after her long walk along the cliffs, Eleanor awoke to the soft sound of rain again, tapping gently against the window pane of her cottage. The mist clung to the streets outside, and the scent of wet earth mingled with the faint saltiness of the sea. She rose slowly, feeling the lingering serenity from the nights before, carrying it like a gentle warmth in her chest. Today felt different, quieter, more intimate, as if Brighton itself were inviting her to explore its subtler mysteries. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside, the mist curling around her like a soft veil. The streets glistened from the rain, and puddles reflected the muted light of lanterns and early morning windows. Eleanor let her feet guide her, moving without hurry, following instinct and the faint echoes of past chimes that seemed to linger in the air. Every sound, every reflection, every droplet seemed meaningful, part of a subtle symphony orchestrated just for her. Walking toward the pier, Eleanor noticed small details she had never appreciated before. The way raindrops clung to the edges of windows, the intricate patterns of moss on brick walls, the faint footprints of early risers disappearing into puddles. She realized that the world around her was alive with quiet beauty, teaching patience, attention, and presence. Brighton was no longer just a city. It had become a companion, a teacher, and a mirror reflecting her own inner rhythms. The pier itself was slick with rain, the wood darkened and glistening under the mist. Eleanor paused at the edge, listening to the gentle lapping of waves against the supports and the soft hiss of water retreating from the sand. She let herself sink into the sensory experience. The sound, the scent, the touch of cool, damp wood beneath her fingers. Each sensation was grounding, connecting her not just to the city and the sea, but to herself. As she walked along the pier, Eleanor noticed a small, old boat bobbing gently in the water, tied loosely to a post. Its paint was weathered and faded, and raindrops formed tiny rivers along its surface. She knelt beside it, noticing the way the water reflected the muted sky above. The boat seemed almost alive, carrying its own quiet energy, as if it had stories to tell from journeys past. Eleanor placed a hand on the edge of the boat, feeling the smooth, worn wood, and allowed herself to imagine the countless adventures it might have taken across the waves. A soft rustling drew her attention to a narrow path leading away from the pier toward the cliffs. Curious, Eleanor followed, her boots leaving faint impressions in the wet sand. The mist thickened, curling around her like a protective cloak. The faint chime she had grown accustomed to echoed in her memory, comforting and guiding. Each step along the path felt deliberate, connected, and meaningful. The trail opened into a hidden cove she had not seen before, nestled between moss-covered cliffs. The cove was almost circular, with smooth sand and gentle waves lapping rhythmically at the shore. A small stream of rainwater had collected near the entrance, reflecting the grey sky and glimmering faintly in the soft light. Eleanor knelt, touching the cool water, marveling at how the tiniest movements created ripples that expanded endlessly outward. A small reflection of how her own choices and presence affected the world around her. As she explored the cove, Eleanor discovered a cluster of shells and small stones arranged in an intricate pattern along the sand. She knelt closer, noticing that each shell seemed deliberately placed, as if someone had taken care to create a quiet mosaic. She realized that this hidden space, like many she had discovered in Brighton, was a place of reflection and meditation, a reminder that beauty and intention often lie in small, subtle details, waiting for those willing to observe. The faint chime returned in her memory, drawing Eleanor's gaze toward the cliffs above. She noticed a narrow wooden ladder leaning against the rock, partially hidden by moss and rain. It seemed fragile yet inviting, leading to a small platform overlooking the cove. Eleanor climbed carefully, feeling the wood shift under her weight, but trusting in its stability. At the top, she emerged onto a wooden platform that extended slightly over the cliff edge. The view was breathtaking. The misted ocean stretched endlessly, waves breaking softly against the rocks below, and the soft grey sky blended seamlessly with the sea. Eleanor sat on the platform, letting her shawl wrap around her, and opened the journal once more. She read aloud passages she had memorized, her voice blending with the sound of waves and rain. The words seemed alive here, resonating with the natural rhythm around her. Her mother's voice, soft and patient, guided her through reflections on life, observation, and the quiet art of noticing. Eleanor realized that each page of the journal had been a step in her journey, leading her not just through Brighton, but through the inner landscape of her own heart. As evening approached, Eleanor noticed a faint glow from the horizon. The sun, hidden behind clouds, cast a pale golden hue over the misty waters. She felt a soft thrill at the beauty of the scene. The delicate light, the sound of the waves, and the lingering rain all coalescing into a perfect, ephemeral moment. Eleanor leaned back, closing her eyes, letting the sensations wash over her completely. She understood now that her journey in Brighton was not about reaching a final destination, but about embracing the journey itself, noticing every detail, and finding peace in the present moment. A soft rustle behind her drew her attention to a figure emerging from the mist, an elderly man carrying a lantern. He smiled gently, his presence calm and reassuring. Eleanor's heart recognized him. Immediately, the same guide whose chimes had led her on her first night of discovery. "You've walked far," he said, his voice low and melodic, blending with the sound of the waves. "And yet, there are still paths to explore. Brighton has many corners, many hidden spaces, and each holds lessons for those willing to notice." Eleanor nodded, feeling gratitude swell in her chest. "I've learned so much already," she said softly. The rain, the sea, the hidden groves, each step has shown me something I didn't know I needed. The man's smile deepened. "And yet, there is always more. The world is patient, and it reveals itself slowly, gently to those who listen. The rain, the waves, the mist, they are guides. But you have also learned to guide yourself." Eleanor felt a profound sense of clarity. She understood now that the journey was both external and internal, a discovery of Brighton's hidden beauty and rhythms, and a simultaneous journey into her own heart and mind. Each cove, each chime, each encounter, and each reflection had been a step toward understanding herself and the quiet magic of the world around her. The man gestured toward the ocean. where the waves shimmered faintly in the soft light. "Walk the shoreline," he said. "Notice the small details, listen to the rhythm, and let the rain guide you. You will find what you need, always, if you remain present and attentive." Eleanor rose, wrapping her shawl tightly, and descended the ladder carefully. She began walking along the shoreline, the sand cool beneath her boots, the mist curling around her like a soft veil. Every wave, every ripple, every drop of rain felt significant, as if each were part of a larger narrative, a quiet dialogue between herself and the world. As night fell, the mist thickened, and the lanterns of Brighton glimmered faintly in the distance. Eleanor felt a deep peace settling over her. She realized that the city, the rain, and the sea had become companions, guiding her, teaching her, and reminding her that life's beauty often lies in its quietest moments. Finally, Eleanor returned to her cottage, her heart full, her mind calm, and her spirit deeply nourished. She placed the journal, the handkerchief, and the small blue stone on the bedside table, symbols of the journey she had undertaken. The rain tapped softly on the window pane, a gentle lullaby, and Eleanor allowed herself to sink into the rhythm of the night. She lay down, the soft shawl wrapped around her, and closed her eyes. The sound of waves, the memory of chimes, and the gentle rhythm of rainfall merged into a perfect, calming symphony. Eleanor understood that Brighton on a rainy night was more than a city. It was a guide, a teacher, and a friend. Each step she had taken, each moment she had observed, had led her to this profound serenity. And as she drifted into a deep, restorative sleep, the misted streets and gentle waves whispered softly in her dreams. The rain continued, persistent yet soothing, carrying with it the quiet magic of discovery, reflection, and presence. Eleanor's journey had been long, but she had learned that every step, every observation, and every breath was part of the story, the endless, gentle, and infinitely beautiful story of Brighton on a rainy day.